Back in the early 1930s, Lost Hollow was a thriving little mining settlement tucked deep inside the Appalachian Range, between Boone and McDowell County. It wasn't even on most maps, just a few wooden homes built along the river, a church, a one-room schoolhouse, and the mine that fed them all. Life was harsh but steady. The men worked long hours underground. The women tended to the homes, cooked, and raised their children. The mountain air was clean, the nights cold, and the church bells were the heartbeat of the valley. Then came the winter of 1936, and the beginning of the end. It started small. A few miners complained of dizziness, nausea, and nosebleeds. The doctor from the next county called it a fever, likely caused by contaminated water. But soon it spread. By January, entire families were bedridden. The livestock began dying, their bodies found pale and stiff, with blood leaking from their nostrils. The townspeople grew desperate. They stopped going to the mines. They stopped ringing the church bell. Then, the dreams began. One by one, the survivors reported the same thing. A woman standing outside their homes at night, barefoot in the snow, her hair long and dripping, as if she'd come up from the river. She didn't speak, just stared through the windows with pale, motionless eyes. That's when the whispers started, that Martha Kellen, the preacher's wife, had brought this curse. Martha wasn't like other women in town. She studied herbs, made tinctures, and treated the sick when medicine was too expensive. To some, she was a healer. To others, she was unnatural, too quiet, too confident, too close to the woods. When the fever took the preacher himself, people stopped calling her Sister Kellen. They called her Witch. No one knows exactly what happened next. But according to fragments of church records and faded journal pages found decades later, the town gathered one night and dragged Martha into the forest. They tied her to a post near the old mine entrance. What they did after that depends on who you ask. Some say they buried her alive. Others claim they burned her and left her ashes in the snow. But everyone agrees on one thing. After that night, the screaming stopped. And so did the town. By spring, half the settlement was gone. Those who could still walk left everything behind. The rest were never found. Lost Hollow disappeared from maps. The roads leading there collapsed under landslides, the forest reclaimed the land, and within a decade, no one could say exactly where the town had been. It might have stayed that way forever, if not for a history student named Eli Turner. In 2019, Eli was studying abandoned Appalachian towns for his thesis at a small college in Boone County. During his research, he came across a footnote in a 1940 survey report. Local miners' camp, Lost Hollow, condemned due to outbreak, believed uninhabitable. That one line became an obsession. Eli started digging. County archives, library basements, local newspapers. He found small clues, a death record here, a missing person report there, all from the same winter. He even found a reference to the Kellen woman in a handwritten letter stored in the state archives, dated February 1936. The letter ended with a single line, "She has taken the sickness with her." Eli was convinced there was more to the story. So in late October 2019, he packed his car with camera gear, maps, and a tent, and drove into the Appalachians. He began documenting everything, his progress, his findings, his nights in the woods. What he recorded over those 2 weeks would later terrify even the search teams who found it. On his first few days, Eli's tone was calm, methodical. He filmed the decaying foundations of old homes, tree-covered stone walls, and rusted mining equipment half buried in mud. He spoke with locals in nearby towns. Most refused to talk. One old man, when asked about Lost Hollow, simply said, "Son, the dead don't like being found." By the fourth night, Eli's recordings started to change. His breathing was heavier. He mentioned hearing what sounded like church bells deep in the forest. Soft, slow, echoing through the trees, even though the church had long since collapsed. The next day, his journal notes mentioned something stranger, a woman's silhouette near the edge of the river, standing perfectly still. He wrote that she seemed drenched, barefoot, and facing the opposite bank. When he called out to her, she turned, but her face, he said, didn't look right. He wrote, "Eyes where they shouldn't be, too far apart, too dark." After that entry, his writing became erratic. Words trailed off mid-sentence. He started describing voices, whispers under his tent, someone calling his name in the night. His camera caught faint movements beyond the firelight, flashes of white fabric between the trees. Then, silence. On November 9th, hikers found Eli's car parked at the base of an old service road near a collapsed bridge. The keys were still in the ignition. His tent and equipment were gone. When authorities searched the nearby woods, they found his backpack, torn open, and a single cassette tape. When investigators played it, Eli's voice was shaking. He talked about finding an underground passage near the mine, the air thick with the smell of iron and decay. Then came muffled sounds, footsteps, breathing, the faint ringing of a bell. He whispers, "She's down here. She never left." The recording ends abruptly with a high-pitched static, followed by a woman's faint voice, whispering his name. Eli Turner was never found. In the months that followed, the story spread online. Paranormal forums debated whether his footage was real or staged. Local newspapers called it a hoax, but those who lived near the mountain claimed otherwise. Truck drivers reported seeing a dim lantern swinging through the trees late at night. Campers heard laughter echoing through the forest, even when no one was around. One family driving through the area claimed they saw a barefoot woman walking alongside the road, soaking wet, carrying what looked like a rosary made of bones. None of them stopped. Historians who revisited the case in 2021 discovered something chilling. Lost Hollow's church records survived only up to February 1936. The final page had a single unfinished entry. "We buried her wrong. The sickness follows her name." No one knows who wrote it. Today, the forest where Lost Hollow once stood is off limits. The land has shifted, trails collapsed, and the mine sealed shut after several cave-ins. But even now, people who venture too close claim their electronics malfunction. GPS fails, cameras glitch, batteries drain. Some hikers say the air feels heavier there, colder, as if the mountain itself is breathing. One local ranger said something that still haunts investigators. "Every few years, someone goes missing out there. We always find their things, never them." For nearly a century, the story of Lost Hollow has been dismissed as folklore, but the fragments remain: a burned map, an old church ledger, and that one haunting tape that no one has been able to explain. The legend says Martha Kellen was wronged, that she wasn't a witch, only a woman desperate to save her people, and that when they condemned her, she took the sickness with her into the ground. Others believe she became something else entirely, bound to the valley, feeding on the guilt and fear of those who wander too close. Whichever version you believe, one thing is certain: the hollow isn't empty. Not truly. On clear nights, when the wind cuts through the trees just right, the valley hums. Some say it's the old mine breathing through its tunnels. Others say it's the church bell, still ringing somewhere deep beneath the roots. And if you listen closely, very closely, you might hear a woman humming, a slow, broken melody that sounds like a prayer. So, if you ever find yourself driving through the back roads of Appalachia and your radio turns to static, don't stop. Don't roll down your window. And whatever you do, don't look toward the trees, because in Lost Hollow, the dead don't rest. They remember. And sometimes, they call you by name.